Hi, I'm Kate Jones. I'm here in my home office in rural southern New Brunswick, and I'm going to be recording Year 2, Chapter 4 of Anne of Windy Willows. The old porch thermometer says it's 0, and the new side door one says it's 10 above, remarked Anne one frosty December night. So I don't know whether to take my muff or not. Better go by the old thermometer, said Rebecca Dew cautiously. It's probably more used to our climate. Where are you going this cold night, anyway? I'm going round to Temple Street to ask Catherine Brooke to spend the Christmas holiday with me at Green Gables. You'll spoil your holiday then, said Rebecca Dew solemnly. She'd go about snubbing the angels, that one. That is, if she ever condescended to enter heaven. And the worst of it is, she's proud of her bad manners. Thinks it shows her strength of mind, no doubt. My brain agrees with every word you say, but my heart simply won't, said Anne. I feel, in spite of everything, that Catherine Brooke is only a shy, unhappy girl under her disagreeable rind. I can never make any headway with her in Summerside, but if I can get her to Green Gables, I believe it would thaw her out. You probably won't get her. She won't go, predicted Rebecca Dew. Probably she'll take it as an insult to be asked. Think you're offering her charity. We asked her here once to Christmas dinner the year afore you came. You remember, Mrs. Macumber, the year we had 2 turkeys give us, and didn't know how we'd get 'em et. All she said was, "No, thank you. If there's anything I hate, it's the word Christmas." But that is so dreadful. Hating Christmas. Something has to be done, Rebecca Dew. I'm going to ask her, and I've a queer feeling in my thumbs that tells me she will come. Somehow, said Rebecca Dew reluctantly, when you say a thing is going to happen, a body believes it will. You haven't got second sight, have you? Captain Macumber's mother had it. Used to give me the creeps. I don't think I have anything that need give you the creeps. It's only just... I've had a feeling for some time that Catherine Brooke is almost crazy with loneliness under her bitter outside, and that my invitation will come pat to the psychological moment, Rebecca Dew. I am not a B.A., said Rebecca with awful humility, and I do not deny your right to use words I cannot always understand. Neither do I deny that you can wind people round your little finger. Look how you manage the Pringles. But I do say I pity you if you take that iceberg and nutmeg grater combined home with you for Christmas. Anne was by no means as confident as she pretended to be during her walk to Temple Street. Catherine Brooke had really been unbearable as of late. Again and again Anne rebuffed had said, as grimly as Poe's raven, nevermore. Only yesterday Catherine had been positively insulting at a staff meeting. But in an unguarded moment, Anne had seen something looking out of the older girl's eyes, a passionate, half-frantic something, like a caged creature mad with discontent. Anne had spent the first half of the night trying to decide whether to invite Catherine Brooke to Green Gables or not. Finally, she fell asleep with her mind irrevocably made up. Catherine's landlady showed Anne into the parlor and shrugged a fat shoulder when she asked for Miss Brooke. I'll tell her you're here, but I dunno if she'll come down. She's sulking. I told her at dinner tonight that Miss Rawlins says it's scandalous the way she dresses for a teacher in Summerside High, and she took it high and mighty as usual. I don't think you should have told Miss Brooke that, said Anne reproachfully. But I thought she ought to know, said Mrs. Dennis, somewhat waspishly. Did you also think she ought to know that the inspector said she was one of the best teachers in the Maritimes? Asked Anne, or didn't you know it? Oh, I heard it, but she's stuck up enough now without making her any worse. Proud's no name for it. Though what she's got to be proud of, I dunno. Of course, she was mad anyhow tonight, because I said she couldn't have a dog. She's took a notion into her head she'd like to have a dog. Said she'd pay for his rations and see he was no bother. But what did I do with him when she was at school? I put my foot down. I'm boarding no dogs, says I. Oh, Mrs. Dennis, won't you let her have a dog? He wouldn't bother you much. You could keep him in the basement when she was at school, and a dog is really such a protection at night. I wish you would, please. There was always something about Anne Shirley's eyes when she said please that people found it hard to resist. Mrs. Dennis, in spite of fat shoulders and a meddlesome tongue, was not unkind at heart. Catherine Brooke simply got under her skin at times with her ungracious ways. I don't know why you should worry about her having a dog or not. I didn't know you were such friends. She hasn't any friends. I never had such an unsociable boarder. I think that is why she wants a dog, Mrs. Dennis. None of us can live without some kind of companionship. Well, it's the first human thing I've noticed about her, said Mrs. Dennis. I dunno's I have any awful objection to a dog, but she sort of vexed me with her sarcastic way of asking. I suppose you wouldn't consent if I asked you if I might have a dog, Mrs. Dennis, she says haughty-like. Set her up with it. You're supposin' right, says I, as haughty as herself. I don't like eating my words any more than most people, but you can tell her she can have a dog if she'll guarantee he won't misbehave in the parlor. Anne did not think the parlor could be much worse if the dog did misbehave. She eyed the dingy lace curtains and the hideous purple roses on the carpet with a shiver. I'm sorry for anyone who has to spend Christmas in a boarding house like this, she thought. I don't wonder Catherine hates the word. I'd like to give this place a good airing. It smells of 1,000 meals. Why does Catherine go on boarding here when she has a good salary? She says you can come up, was the message Mrs. Dennis brought back, somewhat dubiously, for Miss Brooke had run true to form. The narrow, steep stair was repellent. It didn't want you. Nobody would go up who didn't have to. The linoleum in the hall was worn to shreds. The little back hall bedroom, where Anne presently found herself, was even more cheerless than the parlor. It was lit by one glaring, unshaded gas jet. There was an iron bed with a valley in the middle of it, and a narrow, sparsely draped window looking out on a backyard garden where a large crop of tin cans flourished. But beyond it was a marvelous sky and a row of Lombardies standing out against the long, purple, distant hills. Oh, Miss Brooke, look at the sunset, said Anne rapturously from the squeaky, cushionless rocker to which Catherine had ungraciously pointed her. I've seen a good many sunsets, said the latter coldly, without moving. Condescending to me with your sunsets, she thought bitterly. You haven't seen this one. No two sunsets are alike. Just sit down here and let it sink into our souls, said Anne. Thought Anne, do you ever say anything pleasant? Don't be ridiculous, please. The most insulting words in the world, with an added edge of insult in Catherine's contemptuous tones. Anne turned from her sunset and looked at Catherine, much more than half inclined to get up and walk out. But Catherine's eyes looked a trifle strange. Had she been crying? Surely not. You couldn't imagine Catherine Brooke crying. You don't make me feel very welcome, Anne said slowly. I can't pretend things. I haven't got your notable gift for doing the Queen act, saying exactly the right thing to everyone. You're not welcome. What sort of room is this to welcome anyone to? Catherine made a scornful gesture at the faded walls, the shabby bare chairs, and the wobbly dressing table with its petticoat of limp muslin. It isn't a nice room, but why do you stay here if you don't like it? Oh, why, you wouldn't understand. It doesn't matter. I don't care what anyone thinks. What brought you here tonight? I don't suppose you came to just soak in the sunset. I came to ask you if you would spend Christmas holidays with me at Green Gables. Now, thought Anne, for another broadside of sarcasm, I do wish she'd sit down at least. She just stands there as if waiting for me to go. But there was silence for a moment. Then Catherine said slowly, Why do you ask me? It isn't because you like me. Even you couldn't pretend that. It's because I can't bear to think of any human being spending Christmas in a place like this, said Anne candidly. The sarcasm came then. Oh, I see. A seasonal outburst of charity. I'm hardly a candidate for that yet, Miss Shirley. Anne got up. She was out of patience with this strange, aloof creature. She walked across the room and looked Catherine squarely in the eye. Catherine Brooke, whether you know it or not, what you want is a good spanking. They gazed at each other for a moment. It must have relieved you to say that, said Catherine. But somehow the insulting tone had gone out of her voice. There was even a faint twitch at the corners of her mouth. It has, said Anne. I've been wanting to tell you just that for some time. I didn't ask you to Green Gables out of charity. You know that perfectly well. I told you my true reason. Nobody ought to spend Christmas here. The very idea is indecent. You asked me to Green Gables just because you are sorry for me. I am sorry for you, because you've shut out life, and now life is shutting you out. Stop it, Catherine. Open your doors to life, and life will come in. The Anne Shirley version of the old bromide. If you bring a smiling visage to the glass, you meet a smile, said Catherine with a shrug. Like all bromides, that's absolutely true. Now, are you coming to Green Gables, or are you not? What would you say if I accepted? To yourself, not to me. I'd say you were showing the first faint glimmer of common sense I've ever detected in you, retorted Anne. Catherine laughed surprisingly. She walked across to the window, scowled at the fiery streak, which was all that was left of the scorned sunset, and then turned. Very well, I'll go. Now you can go through the motions of telling me you're delighted and we'll have a jolly time. I am delighted, but I don't know if you'll have a jolly time or not. That will depend a good deal on yourself, Miss Brooke. Oh, I'll behave myself decently. You'll be surprised. You won't find me a very exhilarating guest, I suppose, but I promise I won't eat with my knife or insult people when they tell me it's a fine day. I tell you frankly that the only reason I'm going is because even I can't stick the thought of spending the holidays here alone. Mrs. Dennis is going to spend Christmas week with her daughter in Charlottetown. It's a bore to think of getting my own meals. I'm a rotten cook. So much for the triumph of matter over mind. But will you give me your word of honor that you won't wish me a Merry Christmas? I just don't want to be merry at Christmas. I won't, but I can't answer for the twins. I'm not going to ask you to sit down here, you'd freeze, but I see that there's a very fine moon in place of your sunset, and I'll walk home with you and help you admire it if you like. I do like, said Anne, but I want to impress on your mind that we have much finer moons in Avonlea. So she's going, said Rebecca Dew as she filled Anne's hot water bottle. Well, Miss Shirley, I hope that you'll never try to induce me to turn Mohammedan, because you'd likely succeed. Where is that cat, out frisking around Summerside and the weather at 0? Not by the new thermometer, and Dusty Miller is curled up in the rocking chair by my stove in the tower, snoring with happiness. Ah, well, said Rebecca Dew with a little shiver as she shut the kitchen door. I wish everyone in the world was as warm and sheltered as we are tonight.